Hello. Today in my writing process playlist, I'm going to discuss Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. This is kind of a bridge between the ideation stage and the outlining stage. I kind of need to go over my character in my head, my main character, my protagonist, and kind of bridge the two things before I start outlining. Before I get into the deeper aspects of the hero's journey, I think it's important to mention, what do you want from your story? Maybe some people are happy with just writing some fiction, maybe some genre fiction, and they just want to get it out and have people read it, and they don't necessarily care if it's on the disposable side. Maybe a romance book or a horror book, something like that. However, if you're writing something that you want to have longevity, it's important to use this as a template because it transcends the moment and the place. And what I mean by that is that even though Joseph Campbell sort of illustrated this, he did it as someone studying comparative religion and comparative mythology, and this is a pattern he noticed from all of the mythologies from around the world. So it's kind of an eternal archetype. Every culture worldwide has used this. So he spent his life developing it, and I think if you want your story to transcend the time that was written in, I think it's important to at least acknowledge this. You don't have to follow it exactly, but I think there is definitely something to this. And yeah, I think we should use the knowledge that is available to us. So I'm going to start with the 4 functions of myth. The first function is the mystical function. The mystical inspires awe, mystery, and this is kind of the magical side of it. And to be honest, I think my book really leans into this. So for me, this is very important. This might not be important for every writer. The second thing is the cosmological function, and this kind of links local knowledge and personal revelation with the mystical. So this is kind of the greater scheme of things. The next one is sociological, and it imprints the norms of society on the individual. Every society has what is accepted and what is not accepted, and I think most literature within a society kind of is in those boundaries, and if it goes out too far, then it's a little bit overly transgressive. And the last is the psychological, which guides the individual through the stages of life. Now you see these a lot in fairy tales where there's or mythology where there is a lesson to be learned. So here are the stages. The first is the ordinary world. The hero exists in a familiar environment, unaware of their potential or destiny. My character is an amnesiac of sorts, trying to recover his memories, both current and in a past life. So part of my story is that the ordinary world is sort of being broken into by the eternal world. In my case, my story doesn't quite start 100% in the ordinary world. It's sort of in this place of unknown, let's say. And as the story goes on, it will get weirder and weirder. But initially, my ordinary is going to be different than maybe if you think of the Star Wars myth, Luke Skywalker on the farm is the ordinary world. The second is the call to adventure. The hero receives a challenge that disrupts their ordinary world. And usually this happens with an individual that comes into their life. In the case of Star Wars, I'm going to use that as an analogy because I think it's the one that most people will identify with. Obi-Wan Kenobi coming into the life of Luke Skywalker. In my case, in my story, they're going to be 2 people actually, and they draw him into the adventure. I don't want to call it an adventure. That's what they're calling it in the hero's journey, but I would say they draw them into the conflict. Number 3 is refusal of the call. The hero is reluctant to accept the challenge due to fear or doubt. He thinks he should decline the offer. And again, in Star Wars, Obi-Wan Kenobi says to Luke that he should come and study with him to become a Jedi. But Luke is like, nah, he doesn't really want to do it. He wants to join the academy. And at the time, his aunt and uncle are against him even leaving. So it's really impossible in Luke's mind at that moment. That is this refusal. In my case, in my book, the refusal is going to be a little more complicated because I guess this is a minor spoiler, but my main character is going to be struggling with an addiction, and he's not really in the ordinary world. He's already kind of gone off the deep end a little bit, so it needs to start in a darker place than perhaps the typical hero's journey. Number 4, meeting the mentor. In this case, is Obi-Wan Kenobi again. What I mean by that is the first time he refuses him, but then the Empire kills his aunt and uncle. Spoilers. And then Luke kind of embraces Obi-Wan Kenobi's possibilities at that moment. So that's really when Obi-Wan Kenobi becomes the mentor. The mentor provides guidance or some kind of knowledge. In my case, like I said, it's going to be 2 different people. And they're kind of 2 sides of the same coin. One is going to have kind of beneficial information or beneficial guidance, and one is going to be working against him. And you're not going to be really sure which one is which. That's part of my mystery. Number 5 is crossing the threshold. The hero commits to the adventure. In Star Wars, he's forced to, really. He has no other choice because he's lost his family. And he's basically an orphan at that point. And the only person he really knows, other than the 2 robots, is Obi-Wan Kenobi. So in mine, it will actually be a little bit similar because my character is going to be kind of a lone wolf. And he's got this goal that he's searching for that's something very important to him, but he doesn't know how to find it. And these 2 mentors, I don't really want to call them mentors, I'm going to call them more guides, because they're not really there to necessarily mentor him. They're more like the universe pulling him in different directions. Number 6, we have tests, allies, and enemies. In this new world, the hero faces tests that help him learn the rules of this world. In my case, this is going to be the rites of Eleusis, which I discussed in my Emic Rites video. You can find here. And yeah, I mean, it's going to be him sort of entering this foreign world that he doesn't know anything about, and him kind of learning all the different aspects of it. And these 2 characters that are his guides will be kind of the entry point into this world. Number 7 is the approach to the inmost cave. The hero approaches a dangerous place where the object of their quest is hidden, and this is usually a time of deep introspection. You could even say this is like the dark night of the soul, or in psychology they call it individuation. Things are not what they seem in many ways, and the expectations will be subverted. So yeah, this is just going inward. There's usually some kind of existential struggle here, and that will be the same thing in my story. Number 8 is the ordeal. The hero faces their greatest challenge yet, often a life or death crisis, and they have to confront their greatest fears. Because of the noir aspects of my story, this ordeal will reflect the initial call to adventure. Noirs typically start in a bad place. Mine does as well. And usually things get worse and worse through the noir as the protagonist kind of weaves through the maze of people he can trust and can't trust. It's going to be the same in mine. But inevitably, the flaws of the protagonist bring about the destruction of the ego. And that's what this ordeal section is about. Number 9, we have reward, seizing the sword. Having survived the ordeal, the hero takes possession of the reward. This is typically a physical object, knowledge, or a greater understanding. If you think of King Arthur, the sword in the stone, you could even say this for Star Wars. He gets his father's lightsaber. This is all winning of the object. In my case, there will be something. I don't really want to say what it is because I don't want to give away the plot, but it will be an important thing that is kind of coveted. Although I will say mine is not a permanent object. It's kind of a disposable thing, something that's used up. But It does play an important part, and it will be a pivotal moment in the story when everything he thinks is one way gets kind of flipped on its head. Number 10, the road back. The hero must return to the ordinary world with their reward. This stage often involves a chase or further challenges. In my case, it's going to be a bit chaotic. Typically, in many stories, this is a little more straightforward. In mine, it's going to be almost like getting beat down. If you think of like Lord of the Rings, the Two Towers, or you could even say Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, where everything is kind of beaten down and it's all broken apart and you're kind of losing hope a little bit. Number 11 is the resurrection. The hero faces a final test where they must use everything they have learned. They have a rebirth or transformation. Mine's going to be twofold because my story is going to work on two levels. It's going to work on a mundane level, but it's also going to work on a spiritual level. So I have to kind of think about both of these threads and what the reward is in each thread and how they kind of interrelate. And the final one, number 12, is the return with the elixir. The hero returns home with the elixir, which is a treasure of knowledge that benefits the ordinary world. Campbell often calls it a boon or the boon of wisdom. You could see it as the philosopher's stone or the sorcerer's stone. In alchemy, they call it the great elixir. All these great stories use this cycle to illustrate this grand sort of prize that they win by the end. And what that prize really is just the sublimation of the hero into the protagonist. He becomes a true hero then. My story will also be that way, but I don't want to give away too much about the ending, so I'm not going to say how I'm subverting that, but I'm definitely going to be subverting that a bit. And yeah, I think many stories in popular culture use this. Star Wars, Harry Potter, The Matrix, even Iron Man, a lot of the Marvel stories, Lord of the Rings. If you want to know more about it, I suggest reading The Hero with a Thousand Faces and The Power of Myth by Joseph Campbell. And I also suggest checking out the book The Writer's Journey, Mythic Structure for Writers by Christopher Vogler. And that's about all I have for this video. My next one is going to be a bit of a detour. I am going away for the weekend and I need to get my head kind of together on this project because in some ways there's a lot of, I don't want to say busy work, but things I need to kind of get together and sort it out before I can kind of move on. And I decided I'm going to take the weekend, I'm going to a hotel and I'm just going to dive into that. That's my main goal. I will probably do a video inside the hotel about my process, but it's kind of a detour to gather my head. And my next video after that is going to begin the outlining stage, and I will talk about the benefits of maps. But that's about all I have for today. If you have any comments about the hero's journey, you can leave them below. Anyway, have a good day. Take care. See you next time.